Well, I'll just do the best I can at playing it. I listen and I learn, but I don't know how to read music at all.
Reading music seems like the first step in becoming a successful musician, but many of the biggest names have proven that assumption wrong. They work on feeling alone, putting together sounds to elicit the right emotion. Let's look at some famous musicians who couldn't read music. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix is known as one of the greatest guitar players of all time. In 1969, he admitted that formal training and practice had nothing to do with it.
I can't practice those. It's always constantly, like a jam, It's hard for me to remember any notes because I'm constantly trying to create other things. That's why I make a lot of mistakes.
Do you read music?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He reportedly taught himself to play the electric guitar. It was about getting the right emotion out of his instrument. He reportedly even used words and colors to express how he wanted it to sound. Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder has been blind since shortly after birth, meaning he didn't have a chance to learn how to read music. It didn't keep him from showing major musical talent from a young age. He learned to play multiple instruments, including the piano, harmonica, and drums. He was signed to Motown's label at age 11. Stevie has developed a rich catalog of music, and it's won him 25 Grammys so far. Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer began playing piano in bands and then became a jingle writer. That's where he said he began to develop his compositional skills. He became one of the most famous film composers of all time, but never learned to read conventional music notation. His only formal education was 2 weeks of piano lessons. Hans says,
"The best music really happens once people really know what they're playing and they're not looking at their notes anymore. They have made it their own."
Danny Elfman. Danny is another famous composer known for the scores of films like Batman, Edward Scissorhands, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Despite this, he couldn't read or write music for a large portion of his career. Irving Berlin. There are at least 3 examples of successful composers who never learned to read music. Irving Berlin wrote classic songs like White Christmas and God Bless America. Although he never learned to read or write sheet music, he found a clever workaround. He used a special piano that he played in a single key. He then had other people transcribe his music into a readable format. Taylor Swift. Taylor became a megastar when she released her first album. She plays multiple instruments but can't read music. She said in a Rolling Stone interview, quote, "I would not have majored in music because when music becomes technical for me, I don't like that part of it." Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is regarded as one of the best singer-songwriters of all time. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame. This was all without knowing how to read music. His songs were all about eliciting emotions and are undeniably his. Aretha Franklin. The Queen of Soul became such a musical icon by pure exposure. She spent her childhood singing gospel at New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit, and those years helped her learn music by ear. Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton ranked second in Rolling Stone's list of 100 greatest guitarists of all time. He did it all through practice and careful listening. He remembers one nervous session when he worked with Aretha Franklin. He felt out of his element because almost all the other artists were reading from sheet music. He may have been relieved if he'd noticed she couldn't read music either. The Beatles. Yes, even one of the greatest bands of all time couldn't read music. That didn't just apply to one member, but to all of them. Paul McCartney had his lack of formal knowledge exposed on air.
You don't read music?
I don't know. Oh, you got a problem with that?
No, but it's quite amazing.
You have to mention it in front of all these people.
I mean, you're one of the most successul songwriters of all time and you don't read music?
No, as long as the two of us know what we're doing, i.e. John and I, we know what chords we're playing and we remember the melody. We don't actually ever have the need to write it down or to read.
John Lennon felt the same way. He said in a 1980 interview with Playboy, quote, "None of us could read music. None of us could write it." Despite that, he said that when it came to being pure musicians, his fellow bandmates Paul and Ringo were, quote, "as good as anybody." Elvis Presley. The king of rock and roll not only sang but played guitar, bass, and piano. This was all without formal lessons. In fact, he didn't even succeed at lessons he tried. He admitted,
"I failed music. I was taking music. I flunked music, just flat, man. Whew. Elf. Only thing I ever failed."
What he did have were gifted ears that gave him the musical equivalent of a photographic memory. He could reportedly hear a song and play it after only listening to it one time. Eddie Van Halen. Unlike many musicians on this list, Eddie did get a formal music education. The thing is, it didn't stick. He went to Pasadena City College to study music, but it didn't teach him to read traditional notation. He never dug into his scoring and arranging textbooks. Eddie got much more out of learning independently. By listening to his favorite records, he developed the classical runs and flourishes he became known for. As he said,
I fooled the teacher. I was just blessed with good ears. I'd watch his fingers and emulate what he did.
He also admitted that keeping up with new changes in ways to create notation was too difficult for him anyway. He said, Prince. Prince is known for being able to play almost any instrument he could get his hands on. He used dozens of them throughout his musical career. This was despite his inability to read sheet music. His intuitive musical knowledge and commitment to practice helped him become a master. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's Thriller album is the highest-selling album in the world. He didn't become a massive success by knowing notation, but by constant practice and never letting an idea slip away. He'd sing or beatbox ideas into a cassette recorder for his production team to transcribe later. They eventually became the songs the world loves today. Dave Brubeck. Dave Brubeck's song Take 5 is a bit of a mystery. It's an unusual time signature. Making such an interesting piece may suggest he had a massive understanding of music theory, but he couldn't read music at all. Most of Dave's fans or other artists didn't notice, but it almost became a problem for him. He was nearly expelled from college when one of his professors discovered it. Instead, they worked out a compromise. He could graduate if he promised never to try to teach piano. He definitely got the high end of the deal on that one. Freddie Mercury. Freddie was also a man who loved to experiment with music and musical styles. Consider the operatic Bohemian Rhapsody. Did he have any classical music training or ability to read music? He was asked about it in a 1981 interview with Melody Maker, and he admitted he had, quote, very little. I don't need it. I leave that to the others. Billy Joel. Billy Joel may be known as the piano man, but he never learned to read traditional piano sheet music. His storytelling and melodic insight made up for it. They've helped him create a catalog of songs that continue to inspire. Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page played guitar for Led Zeppelin. He's viewed on the same level as most other major rock guitarists, including Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton. Jimmy did have some knowledge, at least enough to write his ideas down when touring as a session musician. That knowledge was far less extensive than many fans expect. He admitted in a 1977 interview, quote, I still don't really need music, to be honest with you. I read it like a 6-year-old reads a book. Kurt Cobain. Nirvana's legendary singer never cared for the technical side of music. The subversive artist even once called music theory a waste of time, saying it got in the way of creativity. Many of his songs are fondly remembered and were influential to the grunge genre. Their simple structure also makes them perfect for beginning guitarists. Dave Grohl. Nirvana drummer Dave Grohl also never learned to read music. He looks at a guitar a bit like a drum set and goes on pure feeling. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you read music? Let us know in the comments section below.